So today I thought I would do something a little bit beneficial for all you Keqing havers or people who just got her and want to know what to do with her. This also ties into the poll that I did like 4 hours ago that just went over like out of these four characters, which build do you want to see the most? And Keqing won by I don't know how much, but she definitely won. So I'm here to showcase build guide, and this is going to be pretty in-depth. So I'm not exactly sure how long this is going to be. I'm going to go over two of the main builds that you can do for her, because there are two ways that you can build her. And then I'm going to go over artifacts, of course, for those two builds, and teammates that you can pair up with her that work well with her. And some other stuff, basically talent priority, constellations, how important are those, stuff like that. So we're going to get right into it to cut the crap and make sure that this is as quick and concise as I can possibly make it. So starting off with weapons, because it's the first tab here, so that's obviously what I'm going to go for. Ignore the lion's roar. Alright, so here's a little disclaimer for you guys. So the flute is definitely a better pick. So here's your first tip. The flute is a better pick over the lion's roar. However, I picked the lion's roar because it was already level 90, and I didn't have the resources to level up the flute, and I probably still don't. So I'm going to keep the lion's roar until I get the chance, and then I'm definitely going to go for the flute. We're going to go over what the majority of the people use Keqing as, and that is an electro DPS. You can do, of course, if you have 5-star weapons, some good choices would be Primordial Jade Cutter, Summit Shaper, and the Black Sword. The Black Sword gives crit rate, Summit Shaper gives attack percent, and so on. Basically, getting that attack percent up as high as you can is what you really want to do for good old Keqing here. Getting that attack percent up, because she is a damage dealer, you don't want to play around with attack. You want to make sure that you don't cut corners and you give her the most attack that you possibly can, which is why the flute is a better pick than Lion's Roar. But if you don't need crit rate or crit damage, then go for the flute. I say this because crit rate and crit damage are some of the hardest things to get balanced on any character, I would say, from my experience. So, I mean, I'm in a position where I can sacrifice some crit rate to get extra attack percent. Because if I put on Black Sword, let's see, I'll put that on just for now. Sorry, Kazuha. My crit rate goes up to 77.3%. I can sacrifice a little bit of that crit rate to boost her attack, because her attack is kind of low without the lion's roar. With the lion's roar, of course, her crit rate drops to, no, I do not want to do that. Her crit rate drops to 49.7, roughly 50%. So that's not too terrible. So depending on your circumstance will also heavily depend on the stuff that you put on her, and basically whatever works well for you. For weapons, again, flute or lion's roar, because they both do attack, but flute gets the edge because of its extra like little bonus thing it does down here. But if you do have Black Sword, again, that is a battle pass weapon, so this is not a free-to-play weapon. So if you are a free-to-play player, then you would probably go with the flute or lion's roar, because I don't assume many free-to-play players have stuff like Summit Shaper or Primordial Jade Cutter. So these two would be great. 3-star weapons I would avoid entirely. Just avoid that, because in the end, 3-star weapons and investing in 3-star weapons, especially swords for the most part, isn't really worth it. It doesn't really pay off. You're just wasting a bunch of resources just to throw them all away on another sword you get. So if you have a 4-star weapon that isn't really tailored to Keqing, like, you know, Festering Desire, or, well, this would, in a case, this is going to be for the other build that I'm about to talk about. But if you're going for Electro, and I mean, Festering Desire isn't a sword a lot of people have as well. That's for like OG players. I don't think it's come back yet. I'm pretty sure Festering Desire is still like a weapon that only OGs have. If you want that energy recharge, you can go for it, but that won't really help your attack. Plus, you can get energy recharge on your artifacts, so this isn't really too much of a big deal. This would, of course, be reserved for people like Bennett and Xingqiu, but we're here talking about Keqing. So, flute, Lion's Roar, those are 4-star weapons you can go for. Let's move on to physical, of course, because physical is the other thing that people do. And since we're at weapons, we can go over physical. A black sword also works with physical because crit rate is very important in keeping your DPS consistent. Prototype Rancor is also something, obviously, for a physical build. I mean, gee, what would give that away? The physical damage bonus, perhaps. But if you are building Keqing as a physical, then Prototype Rancor is a good choice because it's free to play. You can craft it if you have the little billets, if the weekly bosses decide to drop them, or you were patient enough to not use them at the very beginning of the game when you got a crap load of them. You can use Prototype Rancor. There's no reason why you can't craft it because the events now are also giving away the billets. So this is the go-to for physical. Unless you have a 5-star that you would rather use, then this is the way to go. Especially if you're free to play. This is an easy thing to get. It's like dirt cheap. You just don't even worry about it. You're good, you're good, you're good, you're good, you're good. Moving on to artifacts. We're going to talk about physical and elemental here as well. So I have this set up as an elemental DPS, and that is 2-piece Thundering Fury and 2-piece Gladiator's Finale for the attack percent boost and the electro damage boost, respectively. When you're going with elemental, it's important to have attack percent as substats, attack percent, attack percent, attack percent. Crit rate, crit damage are also really good. But if you don't need crit damage, because that's a little bit easier to come by, so you can stop tripping over it, because there's people who will refuse to equip a piece. They'd rather go off piece, not have anything on it all, but just because it doesn't have crit damage, or just it's missing one stat that isn't really the end of the world if you don't have it. But crit rate and attack percent, yes, that is something you want. Energy recharge is... It's not a must, but it's definitely a quality of life thing that will improve the time it takes for you to send out your elemental burst. So here's what I'm running with. So my flower has flat attack, which it didn't roll on. It has crit damage and attack percent, which it rolled on, it rolled on attack percent, obviously, and that's good. It's great. Attack percent rolling is something that you want, but more than likely you're gonna get like defense and crap like that, and it's gonna piss you off. But that's just a reminder, never give up on trying to get attack percent for artifacts that really matter, especially the flower, because the flower and the feather are those two artifacts that you really need to make sure that the substats are really good on. And the three here, these are the three, like the timepiece, the goblet, and the hat. Those three things are the things you can kind of falter on a bit, because the thing that matters most out of anything is getting the main stat. The substats aren't as important so long as your feather and flower have those good substats. But if you're really good luck and, you're just God or whatever, I mean, it's obviously better if you did have perfect substats on all of them, but we don't live in a perfect world. So that's probably not going to happen for 99.999% of you. The feather, I have crit rate, crit damage, energy recharge. There's no attack percent on here. That stinks, because if it did and didn't have this stupid defense, this would be a perfect feather piece for her. It sucks that this is the way it has to be, though. Defense is there, and there's nothing I can do about it. But the crit rate and the crit damage and the energy recharge are definitely a bonus. And you want these to be on your feather and flower. Attack percent, crit rate, crit damage, energy recharge. Any of those 4 things, if you have at least 2 out of 4 of those things, it would definitely be worth leveling that artifact up and keeping it until you get something you like a little bit more. And then you can feed that into an artifact that's better than the one you're rocking with. Unfortunately for me, I don't think I'm going to get one with crit rate, crit damage, energy recharge, and attack percent. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I have this for now, and I'm going to keep that little strand of hope that there will be something better coming along the way. For Gladiator, for the Sands of Eon, or the timepiece, it is important to have attack percent. Attack percent is what you want on this for the elemental Keqing, the electro DPS, however you want to say it. Attack percent or energy recharge works here. Of course, I've already mentioned that the substats need to be crit rate, crit damage, energy recharge on here. The lovely thing about this is that whatever you don't have up here you can have down here. So if you have attack percent up here, then you can have energy recharge down here, and vice versa. If you have an energy recharge main stat timepiece, make sure that you have at least attack percent down here with crit rate or crit damage. You don't need all of them, but the more you have, the better. The more, the merrier. Obviously, no-brainer, electro damage bonus on the goblet if you are the electro Keqing main route person, guy, lady, woman, whatever. I don't have to go over the substats because you already know what they are. As for the crown, crit rate or crit damage, this entirely depends on your circumstance. If you have black sword, crit rate, you don't need to worry about that. It's either going to be, you could, if you actually are in a good position to do it, if you have good crit rate with the black sword and you have good crit damage from your other artifacts, you can just skip both crit rate and crit damage and just jump the gun and go to attack percent, and that'll make her even more of a monster. But if you are like me and you are not in a position to sacrifice one or the other, in both places of course, because I sacrificed crit rate with black sword and gave her Lion's Roar, you can just skip crit rate and crit damage, go to attack percent. But if you don't have the black sword or you don't have good crit rate, crit damage, make sure to use whichever one you need more. If you need crit rate more, use that, obviously. Same with crit damage. And it would be icing on the cake if you had crit damage down here. Again, vice versa. If you have crit damage up here, make sure to you can't guarantee that, but try to have one or the other, both of them. One is a main stat, one is a substat, plus energy recharge and attack percent, obviously if this main stat is an attack percent. Now it's time to move on to the physical damage artifacts, which I do not have equipped because this is not a physical damage Keqing, but if it were, I'm not sure if I even have the artifacts to do this, so I'm going to say it and hopefully you can visualize it along with what I'm saying here. So if you're going for physical, the artifacts you want are two-piece Bloodstained Chivalry, two-piece Gladiator Finale, or with the release of Pale Flame, you can also do two-piece Pale Flame and two-piece Bloodstained Chivalry for the double enhancement on the physical damage. You can do either, or if you don't have Pale Flame, go with Gladiator's Finale. It's basically whatever you got. If you just make sure that you have at least one set that gives physical, whether that be Pale Flame or Bloodstained Chivalry, or again, you can have both, and that will make the physical build better. The stats on there would, of course, be the same thing as before, being attack percent, and the only difference, really the only difference in any case, with the physical build, is instead of having electro damage bonus on the goblet, you would have something like this, like a physical damage bonus cup. That would be something that you would have instead of electro damage bonus. So getting as much physical damage with Prototype Rancor, with the two-piece Pale Flame, two-piece Bloodstained Chivalry, and the piece with physical damage, that physical damage bonus is going to be extremely high. And if you eat food with that, if you really want to eat food with that, you're going to get your physical damage to crazy numbers and start whacking people. Next is Constellation. Now, in my opinion, Constellations are the things, they are overhyped the most out of anything. People always overhype the Constellations. They're like, bro, you have to have C6 to make it. Like, if it's not C6, it's trash. If it's not C4, throw it in the bin. If it's not C2, it's bad. Never use it. Like, you don't need Constellations to make a character good. They definitely help. They definitely improve, no doubt, in most cases anyway. But for Keqing, her Constellations especially, they're nothing that you really need, and you can't control how many Keqings you pull. You can't control if she's the one who ruins your 50-50, so you're just going to have to live with what you get here, and in my case, I have a C0 Keqing, and she suffices just fine. The C3 and C5 are obviously the things that people pay attention to the most, because they upgrade her talents for, no cost, which is always the best part in my opinion. But her other Constellations, like, for 10 seconds after Keqing triggers an electro-elemental reaction, her attack is increased by 25%. Great. This Constellation is really good. C4 Keqing is really good because if you're using her for electro anyway, like electro DPS, you're gonna be triggering electro reactions. That's like no doubt. Like if you're using her for her electro abilities, you're probably gonna be throwing characters in there that cause elemental reactions, and she's gonna be the one who's just there creating them with all of her electro hits that she gets. On top of that, you don't really need C6. C6 is just, I mean, if you have it, great, but if you don't, oh well. It's that kind of thing. Moving on to talents, there are different ways to prioritize talents based on how you built her again. So if you're rolling with Electro, the elemental DPS, then it's best to start from bottom to top, because this is supposed to be her most powerful blast of attacks. This deals the most damage when you activate it as opposed to the other two. This is the thing that's going to be the big punch in the face to anything that you're trying to fight. This is the thing that you want to focus on if you're building her Electro. This comes second because this is her E skill, and in my opinion, this is a really good E skill because unlike the others, this has a really strong uptime. Like the time of, which is also why, sidetrack, this is also why this is the lowest priority for elemental Keqings, is because you're not using this attack a lot. With her E skill, you're doing electro damage probably 70% of the time. Her E skill lasts for quite a bit, and it ends right when there's probably about like 4 to 3 to like no more than 4 seconds left on her E skill cooldown. So that's great, unless there's slowing waters, which that's a pain in the butt. But if we're doing just normal circumstances, you're gonna want to do it from bottom to top, just because of obviously elemental stuff comes before physical. But you know, obviously, if you're doing physical, it's going to go the opposite direction. This is the thing that you're going to focus on first if you're doing physical, because this is what you're going to be using most of the time. This right here, the Yunlai swordsmanship. That's what that is, I think. This is what you're going to be using most of the time, and these are going to be used sometimes, I guess, when you want to get out of a pickle. But if you build her physical, you're going to be using this probably about 90% of the time anyway. So now that we've covered the building and all that stuff, let's go ahead and move on to teammates that you can use with her, because there's a few, and it doesn't really matter which ones you have, which ones you don't have, but the more of the teammates that I mention, the better. I have just a bunch of random crap in here, so let's just get rid of a few. Well, you know what? We can get rid of Fischl and put Zhongli here, because this is a good team here. You can use Xingqiu to get that electro charge, with his little, I forgot what it's called. I don't really pay attention to the names of the talents, I just use them. His E skill will get the enemies wet. You can switch over to her, use her E, and boom, you're getting electro charge, extra damage, everyone's happy. Zhongli is here because Zhongli works with like any team. It's quite obvious that he does. His shields, his lowering enemy resistance, it's just, if you have him, go ahead, use him. There's no reason not to. He's a great teammate to use in that regard. Bennett's here because Bennett's easy to obtain. He's a 4-star, and he's great. He's healing. His heals are great. His circle increases the damage that you output. It imbues certain weapons with pyro, and then everyone's happy in the end. And if you have C1, that'll increase the healing further. It'll remove the 70% healing barrier that's in place for C0, and that's going to make him even better of a choice. If you really want, you can run his E skill just to gather up particles, set the enemies on fire with his little healing field, get some overloaded with Keqing, that works well too. But if you're into more of budget options, like if you don't have Zhongli, for whatever reason you missed out, you skipped him or whatever, you can put Chi-Chi here too, because Chi-Chi can trigger superconduct. I mean, this is a circumstance where you have C4. You can get additional attack percent with that as well. But Chi-Chi's a good healer as well. Other characters you can use, if you don't want to use Xingqiu, a substitute you can use is Zhongling. Zhongling's great. She's a great support. I don't know why she's a 4-star. She's really good, and I don't know. In some cases, she's underrated. Both of her skills, both like her elemental skill and her elemental burst, they're both passive. So you can throw both of those down, immediately switch out into Keqing and start doing crazy amounts of overloaded damage. That's what I like most about Zhongling. She's great support, not much of a DPS, but if you use her as like an elemental support, she's S tier, no doubt. You can also, I mean, if you really want to, you can throw Sucrose in there too. Sucrose is great for grouping up all of the enemies in there. You can throw her Q down, group all of the enemies up, switch over to Keqing, and start using her electro attacks to start, I don't know the word, I guess it's imbue, infuse, whatever. Infuse electro into that little hypostasis that she puts down. They'll take electro damage, they'll take the swirl damage from her, and then you have a nice little clumped together group where you can just start slaying all of them. You can have them all in a nice place there for you. So that's about it. I went over the physical, the electro build, and some team members that you can use with her. Other than that, that's really all there is to it. I tried making this as quick as I can, but because there's a lot to go over with character builds, play styles, and all that, it's not as quick as one would hope it to be, and it is what it is. So I'm going to end the video now. This is basically the Keqing guide. I'll make another guide on whatever character that you guys want to see in the future, but yeah, I'll see you guys later.